Hello and welcome to our Render Channel's Quick Start video for V-Ray for Revit. In this video, we'll go over how to output render channels for flexibility to improve your workflow. A render channel is a render output that contains a specific part of the image's information, such as distinguishing just the reflections in a scene, for example. This enables you to adjust specific components of a rendered image in compositing or image editing to give you incredible control over the final quality of your output without the need to re-render the project. Launch Revit and load the project file channels.rvt from the downloaded assets from this tutorial's webpage linked below. You'll be able to use this project with Revit versions 2015 and up. With the project loaded, go into the V-Ray tab and click the Settings icon to load some settings. Select Sharing and click on Load Settings and load the file channels.xml from the downloaded assets. Click Import Selected. Change the current view to render. Set quality to medium and set resolution to crop region with printer set to a DPI of 300. Now feel free to choose a resolution setting that fits your system's comfort level. Click Settings and click on Fog. Turn on Aerial Perspective and set the view distance to 8,000 meters. The interface will automatically convert 8,000 meters to whatever units you're using, in our case, feet. Now click on Engine. Change the image sampler from progressive to buckets. You can do it just for the medium setting, but I'll do all of them here just for fun. Now let's talk about channels. Click Channels for the render channel settings. Go ahead and turn on all the render channels available here. I'll go over most of them as we continue in the tutorial. Rendering in channels will not impact the render time very much at all, but the flexibility you gain for editing the image after the fact is pretty substantial. In the render channel settings, enable the Denoise channel. This channel is essentially a post-processing effect that reduces noise in renders. First, leave the mode to Generate Denoise Channel as opposed to Replace Rgb Channel to see the difference between the original raw render and the denoised result. The Radius preset allows you to set how much denoising you want, though you can also enter more specific values as well. Turn on Use GPU if you have a powerful video card to make the process a bit faster. Now turn on Z-Depth channel. This generates a grayscale image that gives a brightness value in the render, which shows the distance a surface is away from the camera. Now this is useful for a number of compositing effects such as depth of field or adjusting the look of your atmosphere. So we will set the white point of the Z-depth to be at 12 feet from the camera and the black point to be at 26 feet. Now these values I'm entering are in the project's units. If you're set to meters, these will represent 12 meters and 26 meters respectively. We're of course working in feet, so I'll leave these at 12 and 26. Close the settings window. I'm going to enable Swarm to make the rendering faster. Enable Swarm if you have it installed and set up, otherwise you can leave this off. You do not need to have Swarm for render channels to work. Click Render. I'm adding machines to the Swarm now to speed up the render, and I'll let this go for a while and elapse the time to get the result back for you. As the render resolves, it then kicks into the denoiser pass, as you can see here in the progress window, and now the render is complete. Now let's go over the different channels that we just output. In the upper left of the VFB is the channel list. Selecting a channel here displays its result in the VFB. Rgb Color is essentially your final render in all its glory. The alpha channel is a matte that shows where solid surfaces are in the scene as white. We can see here through the window to the sky, so that part of the alpha channel is black, which denotes transparency or even empty space. Some render channels are advanced workflows for a lot of control in the composite, so let's just go over the primary channels that when properly combined in image editing, like with Photoshop or After Effects, reassemble into the final RGB render, often called the beauty. The diffuse channel is the flat color of the project, devoid of any lighting or other surface properties like reflections. Global illumination is the lighting contribution from bounced light in the scene, while lighting is the contribution from the direct lighting in the project, which in this case is the sun. Reflection isolates the reflections rendered into the surfaces per their materials, while refraction shows parts of the image that are shown through refractive objects such as glass, in this case, the windows. Self-illumination shows objects that have illuminated materials. Here, our lampshades material was set to emit some illumination, so they show up in this channel. The specular channel shows the reflection of highlights in the scene from light sources, which again is the sun in this project. This adds the gloss, for example, to these leather seats. The background is the direct line of sight to the background of the project, this blue sky. The atmosphere channel stores any aerial perspective or environment fog that you added to the scene. For us, it was the aerial perspective that we enabled. You can of course save out these channels as their own images through the VFB's save icon seen here. Now all those channels we talked about, when composited together properly, will get you right back to the Rgb Color render. But this workflow gives you a huge latitude to adjust any component along the way, like if you wanted to increase or tint the reflections in the floor without re-rendering the entire project. Now if you had Swarm enabled, DR buckets will show you which machine rendered what part of the image, which is great for troubleshooting if needed. The Z-depth channel shows the relative distance surfaces are from the camera, with white values being closest to the camera and the black and even negative values pushing further back in space. This is very useful for compositing depth of field and other atmospheric effects in composite plugins. Now, the Denoise channel and those other channels below it are what V-Ray generates to help denoise and clean up the render without needing to have prolonged render times with very high quality values. When you click on the Denoiser channel, you essentially get a new RGB channel, but with less noise than the original RGB pass. I'll zoom into this table here to show the difference Denoiser makes in this render. When I switch back to the RGB channel, you can easily see the grain pop back into the image. Back to the Denoiser channel, and all that grainy noise is removed. Compare the results of this painting. The painting has a bump map applied to give it a textured look. The denoiser softens the bump slightly when removing noise from this area. The more noise an image has before the denoiser pass runs, the more detail could potentially be removed by the denoiser itself. Therefore, if you use a lower quality setting in the quality settings in the V-Ray ribbon, you may lose a little texture data. Now move around your image and switch between the RGB and denoiser channels to compare how the denoiser cleaned up your image without adding a whole lot of render time. Using render channels and image editing after a render gives you great control over your final output. Now we'll go over how to assemble the render channels back together in a following tutorial video, as well as on our documentation's website at docs.chaosgroup.com. Thank you for joining us for this quick start video on render channels in V.